He gave his coat to the alien woman shivering in the cold. The next day he discovered she was a Queen Marcus had been standing at the edge of docking Bay 12 for hours, watching the icy winds of Glaciaris Prime sweep across the trading station. The station itself was a massive ring that rotated slowly around the planet, its surface dotted with docking bays, cargo cranes, and neon signs that blinked in a dozen alien languages. Ships from hundreds of worlds came and went, each carrying goods, travelers, or secrets. Marcus was used to the chaos, the mix of beings from different planets, the constant movement, the endless hum of commerce. But tonight, the cold seemed sharper, the crowd harsher. He adjusted the collar of his coat, already damp from the swirling snow that found its way into the open docking areas. Most people hurried by, wrapped in thick fabrics or energy shields that kept the cold at bay. Most people, but not her. She was standing at the edge of the platform, alone, her frame small and fragile against the roar of the freezing wind. Marcus noticed her immediately, though he was surrounded by dozens of other beings. Tall, insected traders with segmented armor, amphibious merchants with shimmering skin, and robotic drones moving efficiently from cargo to ship. But she stood out, not because she was different in the usual ways, but because of her presence. There was something in the way she carried herself, even shivering, that made the world seem to pause around her. Her coat, or what little she had draped over her shoulders, was torn and thin, completely inadequate for Glaciaris Prime's brutal winter. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent under the neon lights, and her eyes, large, silver, and deep, darted from one face to another, wary, alert, as if she had already learned the harsh lesson of this crowded world. No one was safe, and no one could be trusted. Marcus felt a sudden pull in his chest. He didn't know why exactly. He had seen shivering travelers before, aliens and humans alike, but something about her made him stop in his tracks. He noticed how her hands shook, how her teeth chattered ever so slightly, how her breath formed little clouds in the air. He hated the thought of leaving her like that. He approached slowly, trying not to startle her. "Hey," he called over the wind, "are you okay?" Her gaze snapped toward him, wide and cautious. There was a hint of surprise. He wasn't an official, a guard, or someone trying to take advantage. He was just a human, dressed in a thick coat that kept him warm, looking at her with genuine concern. I am fine," she said, her voice soft but clear, with a musical quality that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Marcus noticed the subtle accent in her speech, a rhythm and tone that suggested a different world, a different upbringing entirely. "You don't look fine," Marcus said honestly. "It's freezing out here, you're barely covered, here." He slipped off his own coat and moved toward her. She hesitated, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. "I cannot accept this," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "You will trust me," Marcus said with a small smile. He draped the coat over her shoulders, feeling the cold seep through the fabric as he did so. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she just stared at him, unsure how to react. "You are kind," she said finally, her voice almost a whisper carried away by the wind. "It is unexpected." Marcus shrugged, pretending casualness he didn't feel. "Sometimes it's worth doing something simple. Helps you feel human." He chuckled, hoping to ease her tension, and noticed a small smile flicker on her lips, fleeting but real. She adjusted the coat around herself, and Marcus could see her shivering less. "Your name?" she asked softly. "Marcus," he said. "Marcus Trellan." "And you?" "I am Leora," she replied, as if the name itself carried weight. Marcus nodded, though he had no idea what significance it might hold. "Well, Leora, it's nice to meet you," Marcus said. "You shouldn't be out here alone in this cold. You need shelter, warmth, maybe a hot drink." Her eyes flickered, scanning the station, but there was something in them that suggested she had nowhere safe to go, or maybe she had somewhere but could not or would not go. "I will manage," she said, though the word lacked conviction. Marcus hesitated. He could not walk away now. There was a sense of urgency in her silence, a quiet desperation that tugged at him. "Come with me. I know a place inside the station. Warm, quiet. You can rest for a while. No one will bother you." After a moment she nodded, not a word, just a nod. She followed him, stepping carefully, her eyes constantly scanning. Marcus didn't mind. He felt protective, though he couldn't explain why. Inside the station, the warmth hit them immediately. The air was thick and slightly humid compared to the icy wind outside. Merchants shouted, machines whirred, and the neon lights cast a colorful glow over everything. Marcus led Leora to a small cafe tucked into a quieter corner of the station. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe, and it had warmth. They sat across from each other. Marcus ordered 2 hot beverages, one for himself and one for her. She accepted hers with a slight bow, holding the cup carefully as if it were precious. "You don't drink much," Marcus noted after a moment, watching her sip slowly. "I rarely drink anything warm," she admitted. "It is unnecessary on my homeworld. And here I have never felt such cold." Marcus smiled softly. "Well, consider this your first experience with proper warmth." For a while they sat in silence, the soft hum of the cafe around them. Marcus didn't want to fill the air with meaningless chatter, but he wanted her to feel at ease. "You are unusual," she said after a while, her voice curious now, not shy. "I have never met a human who offered kindness without question, without expectation." Marcus shrugged. "Maybe I'm not so unusual. Maybe I just know what it feels like to be cold and alone." Her eyes lingered on him, and he could see the spark of something deeper, curiosity, wonder, maybe even a hint of admiration. "It is rare," she said finally. They spoke little after that. Words seemed unnecessary. Marcus felt a connection he couldn't explain, something beyond species, beyond station politics, beyond even common courtesy. There was a quiet understanding, a sense that both of them had found something unusual in the chaos of Glaciaris Prime. Hours passed. The station grew quieter as night deepened. Marcus noticed Leora's eyes growing heavy. She had not slept well, he realized, and her body had endured more than the cold of the station. "You should rest," he said gently. "I can help find a place for you, somewhere safe." "I cannot trouble you further," she whispered. "You are not troubling me," Marcus insisted. "Come on, let's find somewhere safe." They walked through the station's corridors until Marcus found a guest room in one of the smaller lodges, a place meant for traveling merchants. It was simple, warm, and safe. He helped her inside. "You can rest here," he said. "I'll make sure no one bothers you." She looked at him, her eyes wide, unguarded for the first time. "You are human?" "Yes," he said simply, "and I'm not going anywhere until you're safe." She nodded once, quietly, almost imperceptibly, and moved to sit on the bed. The coat Marcus had given her still draped over her shoulders, and he realized how small she looked beneath it. She reminded him of fragile glass, delicate but strong in ways he couldn't yet understand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. For the coat, for the warmth, for your presence." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus said. "Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't need a reason. You're welcome." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, with a faint smile, she leaned back and closed her eyes. Marcus watched her carefully. He didn't want to intrude, but he didn't want her to feel abandoned either. Finally, he stood and quietly left the room, making sure the door was slightly ajar so she could get help if needed. Outside, he leaned against the wall and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He thought about how strange it was that a simple act, a coat, a warm drink, a little kindness, could feel so important. He didn't know who she really was, where she had come from, or why she had been alone on this station in the first place. All he knew was that she needed help, and he had given it. And somehow, deep down, he felt that this moment, small as it seemed, might change more than just one night. Outside, the winds of Glaciaris Prime howled across the station. Inside, the lights glimmered, the crowd moved on, and Marcus felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that, in a world so big and dangerous, he had done something good. Something human. Somewhere down the hall, Leora slept, wrapped in his coat, unaware that her life, and perhaps the life of the galaxy, was about to be touched by the kindness of a human who had simply offered warmth on a cold night. Marcus woke early the next morning, the pale light of Glaciaris Prime spilling into the small guest room. The cold of the night had passed, replaced by the faint warmth of artificial heaters and the distant hum of the station. He stretched and rubbed his eyes, still feeling the weight of the previous night, the memory of her trembling figure, the silver coat barely covering her, and the quiet trust in her eyes when he draped his coat over her shoulders. He wondered what had become of her once he left the room. He decided to check the cafe downstairs for breakfast, hoping to collect his thoughts. As he walked through the station, he noticed the usual morning crowd, merchants calling out deals, robots moving cargo efficiently, and travelers from dozens of worlds moving with purpose. But there was a strange tension in the air, something he could not immediately place. Then he heard the whispers. At first it was just a few people murmuring, "Did you hear? They say she's here. The Queen is on the station." Marcus frowned, pausing mid-step. The Queen, he had no idea what they were talking about. By the time he reached the cafe, the whispers had spread like wildfire. Screens around the station displayed breaking news. Queen Leora of the Elythian Empire has arrived unexpectedly at docking bay 12. Marcus froze. The name, Leora. His mind raced back to the previous night. The woman he had helped, could it really be her? A queen, and she had been standing alone, shivering in the cold with no one to help her. It seemed impossible, yet every detail fit. The silver eyes, the delicate presence, the quiet dignity. He left the cafe and headed toward docking bay 12. The station had changed overnight. Security drones moved with purpose, cordoning off areas, while armed guards, uniformed in deep blue and silver, watched the crowd carefully. The docking bay was no longer just a place for merchants and travelers. It had become a stage for a royal arrival. As he navigated through the bustling crowd, Marcus saw her. Leora, dressed in flowing robes of white and silver, her presence commanding attention without a word. People bowed slightly as she passed, and the hum of conversation quieted around her. Even across the distance, Marcus could see the subtle grace in her movements, the calm confidence that had been hidden the night before. His heart pounded. She looked at him briefly, her eyes locking with his, and there was recognition there, soft, fleeting, but unmistakable. She nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement of the night he had given her warmth and kindness. Marcus felt a mixture of awe and fear. He had helped her as a stranger, yet here she was, the most powerful figure in her empire, aware of his existence and perhaps even indebted in some way. He wasn't sure what to do. Should he approach her? Should he stay back? Before he could decide, a group of Elythian officials moved toward him, their expressions serious but not unfriendly. One stepped forward, a tall figure with silver hair and a crisp uniform. "You are Marcus Trellan?" the official asked, voice calm but authoritative. Marcus nodded, cautious. "You assisted the Queen last night?" the official continued. Marcus hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Yes," he said finally. I gave her my coat. She was shivering." The official's expression softened slightly, and he gestured for Marcus to follow. "She wishes to see you. Now." Marcus swallowed hard and followed them, weaving through the increasingly crowded corridors. Every step brought him closer to the woman who had captured his attention the night before and now carried the weight of an entire empire. He tried to steady his breathing, reminding himself that she had trusted him once already. They led him into a large chamber within the station, designed with elegance that Marcus had never seen before. Soft light reflected off polished walls, and the space was quiet except for the hum of the station beyond. At the far end stood Leora, her robes shimmering slightly, her silver eyes focused on him. She did not rise from her seat, but the power in her gaze made the room feel both welcoming and intimidating at the same time. "Marcus Trellan," she said, her voice calm, melodic, and full of authority. "You helped me last night when no one else would. I have been told of your kindness. You did not know who I was, yet you acted without hesitation." Marcus felt his cheeks flush. I didn't know. He stopped, unsure how to explain a simple human act to someone who had probably seen a lifetime of politics, power, and deception. "You acted as a human should," Leora said softly, a faint smile touching her lips. "Without thought of reward, without fear. You gave warmth to another being because it was the right thing to do. That is rare in any world." Marcus swallowed. I didn't think about it that way. I just saw someone in need." "Exactly," Leora said, nodding. "That is why I wish to know you better. There are things about my empire, my people, and my life that few outsiders understand. You may help me see things I cannot, as one who is not bound by the expectations of my station." Marcus blinked. He was stunned. "Me, help the Queen?" "Yes," Leora said simply. "Not as a servant nor as a diplomat, but as a human who understands kindness, empathy, and honesty. Qualities that are surprisingly uncommon even among those I trust." He hesitated. The offer was overwhelming. A human and ordinary trader suddenly recognized and sought by a queen. He thought about his simple life, the long hours at the docks, the cold nights, and the quiet routines. And now this, an invitation to see the world through the eyes of a ruler. I don't know what to say," Marcus admitted. "Say nothing," Leora replied. "Just come with me, observe, learn, and perhaps teach me something I cannot see. There is no pressure, only understanding. Are you willing?" Marcus nodded, finally finding his voice. "Yes. I'll do my best." and so began a new chapter of his life. Over the next few days, Marcus was introduced to aspects of Elythian society he had never imagined. The Elythian people were known for their elegance, intelligence, and strict traditions, and he found himself moving between the worlds of common travelers and the rarefied halls of power. He accompanied Leora as she walked among her people incognito, observing how citizens treated one another, how merchants bargained with honesty or deception, and how ordinary life continued despite the weight of an empire. Leora watched him closely. She noted how he spoke to shopkeepers and travelers with respect, how he helped an injured alien child without hesitation, how he navigated conflicts without anger, and how he stayed calm in tense situations. Unlike the officials and advisors who often sought personal gain or prestige, Marcus acted naturally, with empathy guiding his decisions. One evening, they walked through the station's observation deck. The twin moons of Glaciaris Prime glimmered in the dark sky, reflecting on the icy surface below. Marcus leaned on the railing, taking in the beauty, and realized how small yet significant he felt in the grand scheme of the universe. "You are different from most humans I have met," Leora said softly, standing beside him. "You do not seek power, influence, or recognition. You simply act with integrity. That is what draws me to you." Marcus looked at her, surprised. "Why me? There are millions of humans and billions of aliens. Why would you notice me?" "Because you are rare," she said, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You remind me that even in a galaxy filled with politics, deception, and fear, there are beings who act with true compassion. That is worth noticing." He felt a warmth he had never experienced, not from the heaters or his coat, but from her words. He had only acted because he felt it was right, yet somehow that act had reached someone of unimaginable influence. The following day brought new challenges. Leora requested Marcus' presence during a meeting with her council. Marcus had never been in such a room before. Vast, adorned with symbols of power, and filled with alien leaders whose expressions ranged from curiosity to suspicion. "Marcus," Leora said as she led him forward, "observe, but do not interfere unless asked. Your perspective may help us see truths hidden by tradition." Marcus nodded, trying to stay composed. He watched as Leora spoke with grace and authority, presenting ideas that balanced progress with respect for tradition. When council members questioned her decisions, Marcus noticed subtle tactics. Some tried intimidation, others persuasion, yet Leora remained calm, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. At one point, a council member sneered, "And what is the perspective of a human to offer in matters of Elythian governance?" Marcus froze, unsure if he should intervene. Leora's eyes, however, met his briefly, a silent signal of trust. He cleared his throat and spoke softly. "Sometimes, understanding comes from seeing what is unseen. A fresh perspective may reveal solutions that tradition overlooks." The room went silent. The council members, initially dismissive, glanced at each other. Leora smiled faintly, acknowledging his courage without breaking protocol. Marcus realized that his words, though simple, carried weight because they were honest and unafraid. By the end of the day, Marcus felt both exhausted and exhilarated. He had seen the power of empathy, courage, and honesty firsthand, and he had witnessed how even a human could influence the decisions of a queen and her council. As night fell, he returned to his small quarters within the station. Leora visited briefly, thanking him for his insight and companionship. "You have helped more than you realize," she said. "Not just me, but those around you. Your presence reminds us all that kindness is strength, not weakness." Marcus nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He thought about the night they had met, the coat he had given her, the warmth he had offered. That simple act, he realized, had been the beginning of something far greater than he could have imagined. And somewhere deep inside, he understood that his life had changed forever, not because of wealth, power, or prestige, but because of a single choice: to help someone in need, even when it seemed small and insignificant. That choice had led him to a queen, to an empire, and to a purpose he had never dreamed possible. The stars outside glimmered, distant and infinite. Marcus knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps even new dangers. Yet he also knew that whatever came, he would face it with honesty, courage, and the quiet strength that had brought him here in the first place. Somewhere in the shadows of the grand Elythian station, Queen Leora watched him, her silver eyes thoughtful and contemplative. She had disguised herself among her people to understand the galaxy better, but in Marcus, She had discovered more than insight. She had discovered a human whose heart and mind could change everything. And for the first time in her long and carefully measured life, she allowed herself to hope, not for the future of her empire alone, but for the possibility of a true connection, forged through trust, kindness, and the rare courage of one human who had given warmth on a cold night. The following morning, Marcus awoke to a soft knock on his door. The faint hum of the station beyond had already begun, the sound of merchants preparing for trade, travelers making their way to docking bays, and the subtle vibrations of ships starting their engines. Marcus rubbed his eyes and opened the door to find Leora standing there, her silver robes flowing gracefully around her. Even in the simple light of early morning, she carried a presence that made him catch his breath. "Good morning," she said softly, her melodic voice calm and precise. "I hope I am not disturbing you." "Not at all," Marcus replied, stepping aside to let her in. "I was just getting ready for the day." "I have something to ask of you," she said, a hint of seriousness in her tone. "Today, I wish for you to accompany me as I visit parts of the station where few outsiders are allowed. You will see my people, observe their daily lives, and perhaps help when situations arise." "It will not be a simple walk, Marcus. Some challenges may test your judgment and courage." Marcus hesitated. He had never imagined himself walking through the corridors of a queen's life, let alone in situations that might demand bravery. Yet the memory of her shivering the night before, the trust in her eyes, and the quiet warmth he had given her compelled him to accept. "I will go," he said finally. "I will do my best." Leora gave a faint smile and extended her hand. Marcus took it, noting how small and delicate it felt in comparison to his own. She guided him through hidden corridors and narrow passageways, away from the main crowds, until they arrived at a section of the station Marcus had never seen. A bustling area where Alithians worked, lived, and traded, largely unknown to visitors. The people they passed glanced curiously at him, some whispering among themselves, others pausing their work to admire Leora's presence. Marcus could feel the unspoken attention, the mix of respect and intrigue. Leora walked confidently among them, her posture relaxed yet commanding, and Marcus realized that despite the grandeur and formality of her role, she genuinely cared for her people. Their first encounter came quickly. A young Alithian merchant was arguing loudly with a group of alien travelers. The merchant's stall had been damaged accidentally, and tempers flared. Marcus watched, unsure if he should intervene, but Leora's hand rested gently on his arm, a silent signal to stay close and observe. "I believe the situation can be resolved without conflict," Marcus said softly, stepping forward. "Sir, madam, perhaps we can find a fair solution for both parties. The damage should be acknowledged, but it should not lead to anger or hostility." The travelers turned to him, surprised by a human speaking with calm authority in the midst of tension. They looked at Leora, expecting her to intervene, but she remained silent, observing. Marcus continued, "Let us measure the damage, estimate a fair repair, and ensure that both sides are satisfied. This way, no one loses face, and everyone can leave with dignity." To his surprise, the tension eased. The travelers nodded, the merchant relaxed, and they agreed to a simple exchange of credits to cover the repair. Marcus stepped back, unsure whether he had done well, but Leora's eyes met his with a quiet approval. "See," she said softly, "your presence and words carry weight. Even without rank, even without authority, your honesty and calmness can guide outcomes." Marcus felt a surge of pride, though he tried to remain modest. "I just said what seemed fair," he said. "That is precisely why it worked," Leora replied. "Your judgment is unclouded by fear or ambition. That is rare among leaders in any world." As they continued their walk, Marcus noticed the subtle differences in Alithian culture. The way they interacted with each other, the care they showed for their surroundings, and the respect they had for skill and honesty. He also observed the challenges they faced: workers under pressure, merchants dealing with scarcity, and young Alithians struggling to find their place in a rigid society. At one point, they came across an injured child, trapped under a fallen cargo container. The child's cry was sharp and frightened. Marcus rushed forward instinctively. "Stand back," Leora commanded, though her tone was calm, not harsh. "I will assist, but you must remain steady." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding. Together, they lifted the container enough for the child to escape. The child's parents rushed forward, bowing deeply in gratitude. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest, realizing that his simple action had made a real difference. "You acted without hesitation," Leora said quietly once the situation had settled. "That is admirable. Most would freeze or call for help. You acted." Marcus shrugged. "It seemed the right thing to do. I couldn't leave the child there." "You see, Marcus," she said, "that is why I asked you to come with me. A ruler sees many things, but sometimes an outsider can act with clarity and courage where those bound by tradition cannot." Their day continued with more encounters. Marcus helped resolve disputes between traders, assisted in guiding lost travelers, and even offered simple acts of kindness. A word of encouragement, a small gesture of help, that earned him curious glances and subtle nods from Elythians around them. By evening, they returned to a quieter section of the station, a garden terrace filled with alien flora that glowed softly under artificial light. Leora leaned against the railing, gazing at the twin moons of Glaciaris Prime. Marcus stood beside her, feeling the cool breeze against his face. "You have exceeded my expectations," Leora said. "Not in skill or power, but in character. That is far more important. You have shown me that humans, your people, are capable of courage, empathy, and wisdom that I have rarely witnessed." Marcus looked at her, surprised. "I just tried to help where I could. I never thought it would matter so much." "It does matter," Leora said, her voice soft but firm. "Every act of kindness, every honest word, every choice guided by integrity, these shape worlds, Marcus. They change the lives of those around you, often in ways you cannot see." Marcus felt a quiet awe. He had lived his life thinking his choices were small, that his acts of kindness were unnoticed. And now, standing beside a queen who saw the value in even the simplest actions, he realized that one person could truly make a difference. The next day brought a new challenge. Leora had been summoned to a meeting with the Elythian Council, a group of elders and officials responsible for advising and sometimes challenging the queen. Marcus accompanied her, observing carefully. The council chamber was vast, filled with towering figures and intricate carvings that spoke of the empire's long history. Leora walked in with grace and authority, Marcus following behind. He felt a twinge of nervousness. The council members' eyes turned toward him, curiosity and suspicion written across their faces. "Marcus Trellan," Leora said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "You are here not as a subordinate, but as an observer. Your perspective may guide us in ways our traditions cannot." The council murmured among themselves. One elder, tall and stern, addressed Marcus directly. "And what wisdom does a human offer? Your people are young, untested. How can you understand the complexities of Elythian governance?" Marcus swallowed, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. But he remembered Leora's words, the trust she had placed in him, the value she saw in his honesty and courage. He took a deep breath and spoke. "I may not understand all your customs," he said calmly, "but I can see fairness, honesty, and empathy. Sometimes, solutions are hidden not in tradition or power, but in simple acts of understanding and cooperation. I offer nothing more than my perspective, unbiased and unafraid." The chamber grew quiet. The council members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. Leora's eyes met his, and she gave a subtle nod, silently supporting his words. To Marcus's surprise, the discussion shifted. Council members began to consider his perspective, realizing that even a human outsider could offer clarity where experience and power had clouded judgment. Ideas that had been stuck in debate for weeks found new life, and resolutions emerged more smoothly than they had in years. After the meeting, Leora and Marcus walked through the quieter halls of the station. "You see," she said, "your courage and honesty matter. Not because of your rank, but because of who you are. That is the strength of your people, Marcus. That is why I sought your company." Marcus shook his head in wonder. "I never imagined something so simple could lead to this. I just helped you because it felt right." "Exactly," Leora replied. "It always begins with something small. Your coat, your warmth, your words, they are the seeds of change. That is why I asked you to come with me, to show me and others that even the smallest acts have power." As night fell, they returned to the observation deck. The twin moons hung low, reflecting off the icy surface of the planet below. Marcus felt a sense of peace and purpose he had never known. He realized that this journey, helping Leora, observing her people, and acting with honesty, was changing him in ways he could not yet understand. Leora stood beside him, silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft but certain. Marcus, the world may see humans as fragile, untested, or simple, but I see courage, integrity, and wisdom. You have reminded me that even the smallest person can leave a mark on the universe. Marcus looked at her, feeling both humbled and inspired. I never thought of it that way. I just did what I thought was right. Then you have done more than you know, she said, and the galaxy in ways both seen and unseen will be better for it. The stars above Glaciaris Prime shimmered like a promise, distant yet close, vast yet intimate. Marcus understood that his life, once ordinary and small, was now intertwined with forces and events he had never imagined. He had begun as a human offering a coat in kindness, and now he was walking beside a queen, shaping outcomes through courage, empathy, and simple honesty. In the quiet of the night, Marcus realized that this journey was only beginning. Challenges awaited, decisions would test him, and the future was uncertain. Yet he knew one truth with absolute clarity: being human with all its limitations, flaws, and strengths was enough. Sometimes it was more than enough. And somewhere within the corridors of the station, Leora watched him, her silver eyes thoughtful. She had traveled incognito to understand her empire better, but in Marcus, she had discovered something far more rare and valuable than insight. She had discovered a human whose heart and courage could influence not just her, but the lives of countless others across the stars. The days following Marcus' first council meeting were filled with both anticipation and unease. Leora's trust in him had become clear, yet the reality of Elythian politics was more complicated than he could have imagined. The council, though intrigued by his perspective, still harbored suspicion. Many believed that a human had no place in matters of the Elythian Empire, and some openly sought to undermine him. Marcus woke early one morning to the sound of distant alarms. The station was tense, and whispers of dissent had spread. A faction of the council opposed Leora's reforms and saw Marcus' presence as an affront. They had begun plotting to discredit him, hoping that if he faltered, the queen herself would be weakened in their eyes. Leora found him in the guest quarters, her expression calm yet resolute. "There is a challenge today," she said. "Some council members wish to test your judgment and courage publicly. They will attempt to embarrass you to make you falter. But I have faith in you, Marcus. Your humanity, your honesty, and your courage will guide you." Marcus felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had not imagined that helping a shivering woman with a coat would lead to this, a test not of skill or strength, but of character in the eyes of powerful aliens. Yet he trusted Leora's judgment and knew he could not let her down. They walked through the main halls of the station, past curious onlookers who had begun gathering to witness the unfolding events. Leora's presence commanded attention. Even those opposed to Marcus couldn't ignore her authority. The council chamber was immense, filled with Elythian officials whose eyes were sharp and calculating. Leora led Marcus to the center of the room, where a platform had been prepared. The tension in the air was palpable. An elder, tall and stern, stepped forward. "Human," he began, his tone cold, "you have walked among us, spoken in our council, and offered perspectives unfamiliar to our traditions. Today, we will see if your words hold weight when tested. You will face a scenario that requires judgment, courage, and fairness. Fail, and your influence here ends." Marcus nodded, swallowing his nerves. "I understand," he said. His voice was steady despite the racing of his heart. The council elder waved a hand, and a holographic display appeared, showing a simulation of a trade dispute among Elythian merchants. Some traders were accused of dishonesty, others of negligence. The scenario was complex, with multiple conflicting interests and potential consequences for both the merchants and the empire. "Resolve this dispute," the elder said. "You have the authority to mediate and decide the outcome. Show us whether a human can act with clarity where Elythian wisdom might fail." Marcus studied the display carefully. He noticed patterns, motivations, and subtle cues that the council members seemed to overlook in their rush to judgment. He took a deep breath, recalling the lessons of honesty, fairness, and empathy that had guided him in past encounters. "First," he said calmly, addressing the holographic traders, "we must understand the facts. Each party must explain their actions and intentions without interruption. Only then can we decide a fair resolution." The simulation responded, the voices of the merchants filling the chamber. Marcus listened intently, asking clarifying questions and ensuring that every perspective was considered. He noticed small details, The tone of their voices, the hesitation in their words, the subtle gestures of sincerity or deception. After gathering all the information, Marcus proposed a solution. The merchants who acted in error should compensate those affected, not as punishment, but to restore fairness and maintain trust. Those who acted honestly should be acknowledged and protected from blame. This way, the integrity of the market is preserved, and respect among the merchants remains intact. The chamber fell silent. The council members exchanged glances, some shocked that a human had so clearly navigated a scenario they had debated for months in their studies. Leora's eyes met Marcus, a faint smile playing across her lips. "You see," she said softly once the simulation ended, "your perspective matters. It is not bound by tradition or fear. You see what is right, and that is why I value your presence." Marcus felt a rush of relief and pride. He had passed the test, not by outsmarting anyone, but by trusting in honesty, fairness, and empathy, the principles he had always lived by. But the day was far from over. Later, a second challenge arose, more dangerous and subtle. A rival faction of council members attempted to manipulate an official announcement, aiming to frame Marcus for a miscommunication that could have caused diplomatic tension with another planet. Marcus was called to verify the message before it was sent. He studied the communication carefully, noticing inconsistencies and subtle edits that betrayed the rival faction's intent. He alerted Leora discreetly, and together they corrected the message, preventing a potential scandal. The council chamber buzzed with tension as the rival faction's plan was revealed. Some members murmured in surprise, while others tried to downplay the incident. Leora addressed the council firmly, praising Marcus' insight and integrity. "Marcus' judgment preserved both the message and our relations with other worlds," she said. "This is not a matter of rank or species, but of character and clarity. Let his actions remind us that courage and honesty are valuable traits, regardless of origin." Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction. He had acted without fear, guided by simple principles, and in doing so had protected both the Queen and her empire. He realized that being human in a galaxy filled with power and politics was not a weakness, it could be a strength. That evening, Leora invited Marcus to join her in the observation deck. The twin moons of Glaciaris Prime hung low in the sky, casting a soft glow over the icy landscape below. The events of the day weighed heavily on both of them, but there was a sense of accomplishment and mutual respect. "You have faced challenges today that many Alithians would struggle with," Leora said, her voice calm but filled with admiration. "You acted without fear, without selfish ambition, and with integrity. That is why I brought you here, Marcus, to remind both myself and others that true strength comes from the heart." Marcus looked at her, feeling a mix of awe and humility. "I just tried to do what seemed right. I never thought it would matter so much." "It matters," Leora said firmly. "It matters more than you know. The galaxy often overlooks the power of empathy, honesty, and courage. Yet these are the forces that shape worlds, build alliances, and inspire change. You have shown that even a human without wealth or armies can influence outcomes and protect lives." Marcus felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the heaters or the coat he had given her. It was the warmth of recognition, of understanding, and of purpose. He realized that his simple acts, giving a coat, speaking honestly, helping where he could, had created ripples far beyond what he had imagined. The following days brought more encounters, each testing his judgment and courage in new ways. He assisted with disputes between traders, helped navigate cultural misunderstandings, and even offered comfort to those who felt isolated or fearful. Leora observed quietly, often noting how Marcus' presence calmed tensions and inspired trust. One afternoon, a sudden emergency arose. A cargo lift malfunctioned, trapping several workers in a high chamber. Panic spread among the onlookers, and some officials hesitated, unsure how to act. Marcus rushed forward, coordinating the rescue with clear instructions and steady hands. Leora stayed beside him, offering guidance but allowing him to take the lead. Together, they guided the workers to safety. The crowd erupted in quiet applause, not for spectacle, but in recognition of courage and competence. Marcus realized that his actions, though simple and human, had earned the respect of a world he had never imagined entering. That evening, as they returned to the quieter observation deck, Leora spoke again. "Marcus, you have faced trials that many Alithians would fail. You have acted with wisdom, courage, and compassion. That is why I trust you. That is why I value your presence. You remind me that leadership is not just about power, it is about heart. Marcus shook his head, humbled. I never thought a human could make such a difference. I only tried to help. Helping is never small, Leora said. Every action guided by integrity and empathy has weight. You have reminded me of that, and in doing so, you have influenced more than you know. As the twin moons of Glaciaris Prime reflected on the icy surface, Marcus felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced. He had begun as a human offering a coat to a shivering stranger, and now he walked beside a queen, influencing outcomes, guiding decisions, and protecting lives, all through the quiet strength of his character. He realized that his journey was only beginning. Greater challenges awaited, but he knew one truth with certainty. Being human with honesty, courage, and empathy was a power in itself. A power that could shape worlds, change hearts, and inspire even a queen. And somewhere in the quiet halls of the Elythian station, Leora watched him, her silver eyes thoughtful and unwavering. She had come seeking insight into her empire, but in Marcus, she had discovered something far rarer, a human whose simple acts of kindness and courage could leave a lasting mark on the galaxy. The day dawned quietly over Glaciaris Prime, but Marcus felt the familiar thrill of anticipation. He had grown accustomed to the rhythm of life alongside Leora, navigating her empire, facing challenges, and learning the subtle complexities of her people. Yet today felt different. He could sense that something important was about to unfold. Leora found him early in the morning, waiting outside the quarters where he slept. She had dressed in her formal robes, silver threads glinting in the light, and her presence carried the same calm authority that had both intimidated and inspired him from the moment they met. Marcus, she said, her voice gentle yet commanding, today you will see the culmination of your efforts. The council has convened, and there is a matter that requires both judgment and courage. You will play a role that could affect the future of my empire. Marcus swallowed. Though he had faced tests before, the weight of the day's events pressed on him. He thought of the night he had given her coat, of the trust she had placed in him, and of the quiet strength he had discovered within himself. He nodded. I'll do my best, he said, steadying his voice. They walked together through the station corridors, past merchants and travelers who barely noticed them, yet Marcus could feel the subtle tension in the air. News of the Queen's human companion had spread, and many eyes followed him, curious and skeptical alike. The council chamber was vast, filled with officials whose expressions were sharp and calculating. Some nodded in greeting, others scrutinized Marcus as though he were an unfamiliar piece of equipment, valuable perhaps, but uncertain in function. Leora led Marcus to the center of the chamber, where a large table displayed holographic maps, reports, and communication logs. The elders and advisors took their seats, some whispering quietly, clearly intrigued by the presence of the human who had altered outcomes in the past days. Marcus Trellan, Leora began, her voice resonant, you have witnessed the workings of our council, the lives of my people, and the challenges of our empire. Today you will contribute in a matter that requires judgment, courage, and compassion. The fate of many may depend on your insight. Marcus looked around the chamber, noting the mixture of curiosity and doubt in the council members' eyes. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that the same principles that guided him before, honesty, empathy, and fairness, were just as important here as they had been when helping a shivering woman with a coat. The matter at hand was urgent. An important Elythian outpost on the outskirts of the Empire had reported a dispute between two neighboring planets. Tensions had escalated, threatening trade, alliances, and even lives. The Council had debated for days, yet could not reach consensus on the best course of action. You will review the situation, Leora continued, and advise us on the most just and effective resolution. Your perspective, unbound by our traditions, may reveal solutions we cannot see. Marcus approached the table, examining the reports. He noticed subtle details overlooked by the Council, cultural differences between the planets, economic dependencies, and the small grievances that had grown into significant tension. He thought carefully, weighing each factor. The dispute, Marcus began, his voice calm, is fueled by misunderstanding and miscommunication. Both planets seek stability and prosperity, but pride and tradition have made compromise difficult. A solution should honor their needs while maintaining fairness and peace. He suggested a plan that combined diplomacy, shared resources, and cultural exchange. It included clear communication channels, neutral mediators, and a system of accountability that ensured both planets could trust the outcome. The council listened, some skeptical, others intrigued. Marcus spoke with confidence, not arrogance, and with clarity that drew on simple principles rather than political maneuvering. After several tense moments, Leora spoke. Marcus' plan addresses the core issues. It is fair, practical, and guided by integrity. I support it. The room fell silent. One by one, the council members examined the proposal, discussing quietly among themselves. To Marcus' surprise, they began to nod in agreement. Even the most skeptical elders recognized the wisdom in his approach. Finally, the council head spoke. This solution is sound. It considers all parties, maintains fairness, and prevents unnecessary conflict. It appears that the human perspective has achieved what tradition and debate could not. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and pride. He had not sought recognition, yet here he was, shaping the outcome of a potentially dangerous dispute. He realized that being human, acting with honesty, courage, and empathy, was a form of influence that even the most powerful Elythians respected. After the council meeting, Leora and Marcus walked through the quieter sections of the station. The twin moons of Glaciaris Prime cast their gentle light across the icy landscape, reflecting softly off the walls of the station. "You have done more than I could have hoped," Leora said, her voice calm but full of admiration. "You have shown that courage and empathy are powerful tools, sometimes stronger than armies or decrees. Your humanity has made a difference not just for me, but for countless others across the Empire." Marcus shook his head, humbled. "I just tried to help. I never imagined it would matter this much." "Helping is never small," Leora replied. "It grows, influences, and inspires. You have reminded me that even the smallest acts can leave a lasting impact. You have reminded the council, and me, that true strength lies in integrity and heart." That evening, the station hosted a formal ceremony to acknowledge Marcus' contributions. Though he had never sought recognition, the council and citizens alike gathered to express gratitude. Gifts were offered, speeches were made, and accolades presented. Yet Marcus felt the greatest reward was not in recognition, but in knowing that his actions had truly mattered. During the ceremony, Leora approached him, her silver eyes shining with warmth. "Marcus," she said softly, "your presence has changed more than decisions and policies. You have reminded all of us why we lead, to protect, to guide, and to act with honor. For that, you have my deepest respect." Marcus felt a warmth that had nothing to do with heaters or clothing. It was the warmth of understanding, purpose, and connection. He realized that the trust he had offered a shivering stranger long ago had returned in a way he could never have imagined. Over the following weeks, Marcus continued to assist Leora, offering perspective, support, and guidance. The Empire began to flourish under decisions influenced by both Elythian wisdom and human honesty. Trade disputes were resolved peacefully, alliances strengthened, and the citizens of Glaciaris Prime and surrounding planets began to recognize the value of compassion, fairness, and courage. Through it all, Marcus and Leora developed a quiet, unspoken bond. She had arrived on the station as a queen incognito, seeking understanding of her people. Yet she had found something more. A human whose heart, courage, and integrity could inspire change and remind her of the core values she wished to uphold. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, looking out over the icy plains and shimmering moons, Marcus spoke. "I never imagined that helping someone with a coat could lead to all this." Leora smiled, her expression soft but thoughtful. "Sometimes the smallest acts have the greatest consequences. Your coat, your warmth, your honesty. They were seeds that grew into something far larger. You have reminded me and my people that true strength is not measured by power alone, but by heart, courage, and compassion." Marcus looked out at the horizon, feeling a sense of peace he had never known. He had started as a human simply trying to do the right thing, and now he was part of something far greater, a galaxy influenced not by force or fear, but by empathy, integrity, and courage. Leora reached out, placing a hand gently on his arm. "Marcus, the world is better because of you. You have shown me that humans are capable of greatness, not because of might, but because of their hearts. You have reminded me that even one person, guided by honesty and courage, can change the course of events, shape the lives of many, and leave a mark that endures." Marcus felt a quiet humility. I only did what I thought was right. I never expected to make a difference. Yet you have, Leora said firmly. And for that I am grateful. For that my people are grateful. And for that the galaxy will remember the value of humanity. As the moons cast their silver light across the icy plains, Marcus realized that his life had changed forever. A simple act of kindness had led him to a queen, an empire, and a purpose he had never imagined. He understood that being human, with all its limitations and strengths, was more than enough to make a difference. In the quiet of the observation deck, surrounded by stars, ice, and the soft glow of the moons, Marcus understood that his journey was far from over. Challenges would come, decisions would need to be made, and the galaxy would continue to test both him and Leora. Yet he also knew that whatever lay ahead, he would face it guided by the principles that had brought him here. Honesty, courage, empathy, and the quiet strength of one human who had chosen to act with heart. And somewhere within the corridors of the Elythian station, Leora watched him with a quiet, profound respect. She had arrived seeking insight into her empire, yet she had found something far rarer. A human whose simple, honest acts could inspire change, foster trust, and remind even a queen that true strength lies in integrity and heart. The stars above glimmered like distant promises, vast and infinite, yet intimate in their quiet beauty. Marcus realized that the galaxy was full of challenges, but also full of opportunities to act, to inspire, and to make a difference. And so he stood there with Leora, a human who had given warmth to a stranger, now standing beside a queen, shaping the future with nothing but courage, kindness, and the quiet strength of the human heart.